Hello and welcome to Gair and Karunatilllake Lesson 3, Reading 3 on page 42 of the printed book. This is a very short one. It is the reading of the first noble truth. So I will remove the title page and share the screen with you. Apologies on the previous clip. I forgot to share my screen when I was making the notes. Hopefully no harm done, since there weren't that many notes to make, and you have them all anyway available to you on PDF. I'll read it to you first, and then I'll do a share screen when I start to make the notes. Idam ko panabhikkabe dukkham arya satcham jatipi dukkha jarapi dukkha vyadhipi dukkha maranampi dukkham apyehi sampayogo dukkho pyehi vippayogo dukkho yam picham nalabhati tampi dukkham sankittena panchupadana kandhapi dukkha. Now, you may have noticed there is a discrepancy between the text in the printed book and the text that I've used from the Kelly translation, where Vyadhi is missed out. Not to worry, it's there in the printed book, and I'll explain it anyway. So I will move the typescript away and get back to my notes. So, idam kopana bhikkhave dukkham arya satcham. Now, what's the meaning of ko and pana? These are just infill words. If those words had been omitted, it wouldn't alter the meaning at all. This idam bhikkhave, idam dukkham arya satcham. This is the noble truth of suffering. Idam kopana, kopana, just more sonorous, sententious, sentence balance, musical. These are the effects of these words. So, idam, of course, is the neuter singular this. Idam, satcham, is a neuter noun. Dukkham arya satcham, the noble truth of suffering. There is some doubt among the scholars as to the exact syntactical structure of a phrase that is so well entrenched in Buddhism. Odd that there's some doubt about it, but there it is. It doesn't really matter. The dukkham arya satcham. Is dukkham here being used as an adjective? Dukkha, as in sukha and dukkha, are both adjectives and nouns. Or is the M in dukkham an infill? Or is dukkham the accusative of reference? I mean, the arya satcham, the truth with reference to dukkha. Let me explain all three. Dukkham, if this were a neuter noun, then it would be literally the suffering noble truth, which doesn't quite sound right, because the truth is not of itself suffering, not of itself painful. A truth is a truth. It could conceivably be part of a compound, as a dukkha arya satcham, the pain noble suffering, is the noble suffering of dukkha. That's possible. And possible in particular because we've got dukkha, let's say it's a compound, dukkha arya satcham, grammatically perfectly correct. dukkha arya, we're going to make it dukkharya satyam, dukkha arya satyam, or do you insert a euphonic M, purely euphonic, to either dukkha arya or dukkharya satyam? That's perfectly possible. Or is it what's known as the accusative of reference? The Arya Satyam, the noble truth concerning dukkha, the noble truth with regard to dukkha. This is not a very common phenomenon in Pali, the accusative of reference, but it does exist, and it is therefore one of the possibilities. I'm not sure that I have a favourite. The Dukkhamarya Satyam, the first one, doesn't sit quite rightly with me, although this one has been advocated as a possibility. It sounds clumsy and wrong to me. Dukkhamarya Satyam with a euphonically inserted M, with Dukkhamarya Satyam, the accusative of reference, namely of the noble truth with regard to dukkha. Both of those I'm entirely happy with, and they sound natural to me. I won't come down one side or the other. It's not necessary. I think both possibilities can simply coexist. So, jati dukkha. Jati, we know from the root jan, to be born. Normally you would expect a past participle. Asterisk is for an incorrect form that doesn't exist, given for illustrative purposes. You expect janta, but janta does not exist. Instead it becomes jata. Jata meaning born. And the Jataka stories, the birth stories. So just as the past participle jata is born, so the verbal noun is jati, meaning birth. And as I've told you before, it's used in modern Hindi as well. If you ask somebody what caste he is, you say, "Aapki jati kya hai?" Literally, what is your birth? So here we have jati pi again. It's just a list of things. It doesn't add much. It's the pi. I mean, it's a flavouring word. It adds a bit of sentence balance, just in a raw string of words. You put in these little sentence balances, sentence fillers. It sometimes means even, as in the previous reading. Anyam ekadhamam pi, not even one single thing. Here it doesn't mean that. It's just it's a fill-in word in a list. So jati pi dukkha. Here we see jati is a feminine noun, and here we see dukkha being used as an adjective. So jati pi dukkha, that is now being used as an adjective, meaning painful, causing suffering, connected with dukkha. Jara pi dukkha, jara. Old age. It's also connected with the idea of decay and getting worn out. Even in modern Hindi, you talk about something being jeeran kshirn, just worn out and rotten. Anyway, jara, it is cognate, as I mentioned with the notes, with the Greek ger, as in geriatric, from the Greek geraios, modern Greek geros, meaning old. So there we are, geriatric, it's that same word. So jarapi dukkha, old age, is dukkha. Now there's a word that is omitted from the typescript, but is there, and it is vyadhi. and sickness, but not just sickness. There's more to it than sickness. Look at the origin of that word. It is vi in Sanskrit. Vi, from the root viadha, that's the verb, and it makes the noun viadhi, which by sandhi, the via becomes vya, viadhi. Now, it's entertainingly, if one can bring entertainment into the noble truth of suffering, it's the linguistic exact opposite of samadhi. So, verb dha, cognate with the Greek the, meaning to put, as in thesis, antithesis, synthesis, means to put. Adha means to put or bring towards you. Samadha, the sum with the idea of gathering completeness. Samadha means to gather in towards you, and the verbal noun changes the final vowel to e. So samadhi. So linguistically, the word samadhi just means concentration in the sense, the old-fashioned concentration, bringing something into a center. Samadhi, bringing it all in to the center. Now, by contrast, the opposite of sam is very often vi. So sam has the meaning of together, bring it all in, and vi often has the meaning of splitting apart. So viadhi, so samadha makes the noun samadhi, bringing it all together, and viadha, viadhi, which instead of bringing it all together, the whole thing's falling apart. So that's the basic meaning of that word, is falling apart. And it's the word that's used for sickness. So particularly the kind of sickness of old age, when you feel you're falling apart. That is very exactly the idea behind vyadhi. So jarapi dukkha, old age is dukkha. Vyadhi bi dukkha, it's no fun when you start falling apart, is what that means. And finally, maranam pi dukkham, death is painful. Note here now in this first line that jati, jara, and vyadhi are all feminine nouns, and that is why it's jati pi dukkha, jara pi dukkha, and vyadhi pi dukkha. And maranam is death, maranam pi dukkham. Death is dukkha, death is painful. Note a slight difference here in Sanskrit than Pali. Mrityu, Pali machu, means death, but it means more not the process of dying, but it means more the status of being dead rather than being alive. Whereas from the same root, our root mri, meaning to die, marana, same in Pali and Sanskrit. Let me just ring the Sanskrit ones. Style red for Sanskrit. Here we are. Marana is more the process of dying, as opposed to the status of being death, being dead. So what he's not saying that, you know, it's very awful for you after you're dead. What is being said here is that, you know, when you come to die, the actual process of dying is maranampi. The process of dying is dukkham, is painful. So apyehi sampayogo dukkho. Dukkho now, you see, it's the masculine singular, because to agree with sampayogo, yogo, joining, payogo being joined, as sampayogo being joined up with, being associated with. So apyehi sampayogo dukkho. Apyehi priya. Oops. Priya is something pleasant and agreeable, and pleasantness and agreeableness and lovableness. The noun in Sanskrit is priti, which is the first name of the current Home Secretary. That's Priti Patel. That is this. That's this word. So priti, Sanskrit in Pali, piti is the noun, and priya, Pali, piya, is the adjective. So unloved, something unpleasant in Sanskrit is apriya, and in Pali that becomes appiya, as usual with the p doubled to reflect the fact that it's a consonant cluster in Sanskrit, not appiya but apriya, so appiya in Pali. Sampayogo, being associated with, I've done a note on it in the Sanskrit. So sampayogo, being joined with, being in conjunction with, being in the company of. Apyehi is the instrumental plural, so because you're joined with them. Apyehi here is either ambiguous or it's both at the same time, either unpleasant people or unpleasant things, or that which is unpleasant. I say that it is deliberately intended to cover both. So apyehi, the unloved. Just as in English we could talk about the unloved. I'm living with the unloved, meaning with a circumstance of life that is unloved, with unloved things, with unloved people. It can mean both in Pali as it can in English. And I think it's intended to cover, you know, whenever you're stuck with a person, thing, place, circumstance you don't want to be with, all of that is appiya. So instrumental plural, appiyehi sampayogo, being hitched up and stuck with unloved things. That is dukkho. Now, conversely, piyehi, the loved things, instrumental plural again, vipayogo. So you see again the contrast between the verbal prefix sam as in sampayogo and vi as in vipayogo. So being joined together, sampayogo, hitched up with the unloved, or vi, separated from. You've lost your prayoga. You've lost your associate, viprayoga, Pali vipayoga, being separated or split away from the piyehi, from the loved. And that is dukkho. Note again with vipayogo, just as apriyehi, apriyai it would be in Sanskrit, apriya becomes appiya in Pali, so viprayoga in Sanskrit becomes vipayoga with a double P in Pali. So piyehi vipayogo dukkho. So being split away from, separation from the loved is dukkho. Yampicham nalabhati tampi dukkham. Now here the P, tampi dukkham, has the meaning of also. This is the neuter singular. Tam just means that, the general that circumstance. Tampi dukkham, that too is painful. Now here we've got the dukkham in the neuter. It's now a neuter adjective because it agrees with the neuter singular tam. Tampi dukkham. That also is dukkha, is painful. Now, yam picham nalabhati. Let me just explain this sentence to you. Yam picham nalabhati tampi dukkham. So, yam tam are correlatives. You see, which, that. Which wanting he does not get. Yam pi icham nalabhati tampi dukkham. That too is suffering. So in English, we just say wanting something that he doesn't get is suffering. In English, in Pali, you say what he wants, that not getting is sorry. Which wanting he does not get, that is suffering. The icham, it's the root ish, slightly irregular because it makes its present tense in ichati. Ichati, he wants. Ichati is the same in Sanskrit and Pali. The icham is the short form present participle. The long form present participle, by the way, is ichanto, ichanta. Icham, masculine singular, wanting as a present participle. So, yam pi icham, that which wanting, nalabhati, he does not get. So in other words, the thing that is wanted but not got. Tampi dukkham, that also is suffering. Now the tampi dukkham, the tam, could be one of two things. Tam here could be either a direct correlative of the yam, meaning whatever he wants, that is suffering. In other words, the thing itself becomes painful if he hasn't got it. Or the tam could more generally refer to the entire circumstance of there being things that you want but can't get. It could be either. It's a slightly fluid construction to the sentence. So we could translate it as yam pi icham nalabhati, literally which, or that which wanting he does not get. Icham nalabhati tampi dukkham, that too, or just that, is painful, or that is suffering. Look also at the word dukkham here in tampi dukkham. Again, there is a potential ambiguity here. Dukkham could be used here as a noun or an adjective. Earlier on in this paragraph, we know that it's used as an adjective because it's jatipi dukkha, jirapi dukkha, vyatipi dukkha, feminine because it's an adjective agreeing with those feminine nouns. Maranampi dukkham, okay, it has to be an adjective there because it's in a sequence with the other adjectives, and followed in the next phrase by what is clearly an adjective in the masculine singular, apyehi sampayogo dukkho. The dukkham here could potentially be a noun. It could mean it could be an adjective or a noun. Tampi dukkham, that is painful, that thing is painful. But it could also mean, and I tend to think it's more likely to mean that tampi dukkham, tam meaning that entire circumstance. That entire circumstance is dukkha. And then the yam takes on a slightly different meaning. Sorry to overload it with so many possibilities, but it's a little bit fluid, just as English can be a little bit fluid. Yam can mean that in the sense of the fact that. And this now makes probably better sense. Look at it this way. If yam means the fact that, and tam then means that circumstance, then it makes very good sense indeed. Yampi, the fact that, icham nalabhati, the fact that wanting, or despite wanting, he does not get, tampi dukkam. That, in other words, that entire scenario, that circumstance, is dukkha. Sankitena, the root ship means literally to throw. In fact, in the current lessons we're doing in Lily de Silva, you talk about something akipati, literally throws down, but just means puts. But sankitena, literally to throw together. But the actual meaning is to gather together or concentrate or to summarize or to abbreviate. So in Sanskrit, sankshipta means condensed or abbreviated. In fact, I have a dictionary, a Hindi dictionary, which is the Sankshipt Hindi Shabt Sagar, the shorter, the abbreviated, the condensed Hindi Shabt Sagar dictionary. So Sankshipt. Sanskrit, Pali, Sankitta. Now put that in the instrumental, as we have here, sankitena, that gives it adverbial form. So by condensation, by condensed, in other words, in brief, in short. So he set out a whole series of things, and this is to summarize in short, sankitena. Panchupadana kandhapi dukkha. The pancha upadhana becomes panchupadana. It's a shortener. It would have been equally correct to say panchupadana. So panchupadana kandhapi dukkha. So the pancha upadhana kandha. The kandha, it's the skandha. In Sanskrit becomes kandha. Okay, heap, but then means an aggregate. So this is the 5 aggregates of clinging. So in brief, the 5 aggregates of clinging are dukkha. Dukkha, now, again an adjective, and the a here is not the feminine singular, but the masculine plural, because the skandhas themselves are being described as dukkha, as being painful. Now the upadhana, I think you have it, we'll just run over it briefly. You know, so many times we've had this, da, to give, ada, reverses the motion to give, da, ada to take. And just as the noun from da is our well-known word, dana, this just means giving, adana is taking, as in adinna adana, the taking of what is not giving and not given, adinna dana. Upada, so upa-ada, is you're taking up. The upa is exactly cognate with our English word up. You're taking it up. In other words, you're taking it and clasping it to yourself. You're clinging to it. That is the taking it in, hanging on to it. That's the upada. Upa-ada becomes upada. And just as dana, adana, and in exactly the same way, upadana, clinging. And the upadana kandha, you'll see that the K of kandha is doubled because in Sanskrit it's a consonant cluster. It's upadhana skandha. So Pali upadhana kandha dukkha. They too are suffering. So I shall unshare screen and just read this piece to you slowly. There we go. Idam kopana bhikkhave dukkham aryasatyam jatipi dukkha jarapi dukkha vyadhipi dukkha maranampi dukkham appiyehi sampayogo dukkho piyehi vipayogo dukkho yam picchan nalabhati tampi dukkham sankitena panchupadana kandhapi dukkha. And that's it on this video.